Good morning, everyone. We have quorum and all our tech systems are a go. I'm Councillor Alejandra Bravo, and I'm chair of the Economic and Community Development Committee. We are now ready to call meeting 20 to order. Welcome, everyone, staff, and members of the public here to contribute to our deliberations. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at City Hall in Committee Room 1. This meeting is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. I want to start the Economic and Community Development Committee by letting us take a deep breath and focus on the land where we find ourselves, the traditional territory of many nations, including the Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, Wendat peoples, and more recently the Mississaugas of the Credit, with whom we have in Toronto a treaty that is a binding agreement, Treaty 13, and also that we want to acknowledge that there are many diverse First Nations, Inuit and Métis people who now make Toronto their home and are on this land. The City of Toronto acknowledges all treaty peoples, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came involuntarily, particularly those brought to this land as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin descent. If you are registered to speak today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order and they appear on the list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Economic and Community Development Committee page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Members, the city clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on CMP, the clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to all members of committee if you need help with your devices. I also want to remind all members to please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at ecdc@toronto.ca to help with motions. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? No, seeing none. We are going to proceed to ask, I'm going to ask for a confirmation of the minutes from our meeting on April 8, 2025. Moved by Deputy Mayor Malik. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Before we proceed to the agenda run through, I just want to say a quick word of welcome. The people sitting to my left are different this month, and it's a really exciting moment for this committee to have the enormous amount of work that is handled here. All of the social services, fire and ambulance, we have children's services, we've got shelter and the encampment response, bylaw enforcement. So many dimensions of the work that the city does is handled in this committee. And I'm sorry if I left some things off the list. I'm just too excited to welcome two new deputy city managers, Denise Campbell and Kate Basil, who together, I see economic development and culture. I forgot to mention. I knew I was gonna forget some stuff, but all equally valued and beloved for the work that you do for the city. But Denise Campbell and Kate Basil are going to together help us carry the workload. So welcome and to this committee. And it looks really good. You look great. Thanks. I also want to thank our outgoing interim deputy city manager, Thomas Suze. I forgot because of the last meeting was so hectic. I didn't acknowledge him appropriately, but he stepped in to take over some very serious files, and it was really delightful to sit beside him. So let's give him a round of applause too. Hopefully he's not watching this committee meeting, but we'll let him know that we thank him. Okay, so on the rundown before I proceed to the items, I would like to alert members of the public that There is an item that I will be moving to defer when we come to it, and I'll explain at that time. But let's go through it together, members. EC 20.1, access to outdoor ovens in Toronto parks. That's held for staff presentation and for a speaker and for a motion. I will be moving a motion on that item. Thank you for all of the staff and community members who have contributed to that. EC 20.2, Economic Development and Culture Grants, 2024 Funding Allocation and Creative Industries Grants. Would anybody like to hold that? Or no? Would anybody like to move that? Sure. Moved by Councillor Fletcher. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. EC 20.3, changes to the Rogers Road Business Improvement Area Board of Management. Would anyone like to hold that? I would like to move that, seeing as Rogers Road is partially in my area of Davenport. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Item number 3, we just did, sorry. Item number 4, AC 20.4, Downtown Coyote Action Plan, that's being held for speakers. And I believe also Deputy Mayor Malik has a motion on that. And EC 20.5, micro shelters. For that item, I'd like to draw your attention to the letter that I submitted. It's been published online with the item. And it's a move to defer this to July 9th. While the motion is being displayed, I'll speak to what this is. There was at March 2025 City Council meeting. Councillor Moyes, who will be joining us shortly, had submitted an administrative inquiry, IE 28.2, regarding micro shelters. And I just want to remind people that in 2023, this committee, I moved a motion requesting a report on this as part of the work on encampment review report. At the time, council, city staff delivered that report to council for ratification in June of 2024. Council directed the general manager of Toronto Shelter Services and Supports to report back through the 2025 budget process. And the cost for increasing shelter and respite capacity across the city, including temporary, modular, and micro shelter options. And in response to the administrative inquiry, the general manager of Toronto Shelter Services and Supports indicated an update on proposed micro shelter pilot will be provided to this committee and council in July of 2025 as part of the annual infrastructure report. So I'm proposing that we defer this item to be considered together at the July 9th, 2025 meeting of ECDC, where there will be an opportunity to have a more comprehensive deliberation on the infrastructure plan of the 10-year homelessness service capital infrastructure strategy. And I have spoken to the mover of the administrative inquiry, Councillor Moyes, and he agrees with this deferral. Are there any questions of the mover? No. All in favor of deferral? Okay, so any speakers that were registered today, although we have spoken to registered speakers, you will have an opportunity to speak on this item, as will all members of the public, at the July 9th, 2025, now that this item is adopted. Thank you. So that concludes the agenda rundown, and we're now ready for Parks and Recreation for a presentation on EC 20.1, access to outdoor ovens in Toronto parks. Welcome. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves.
We all ready to go? Great. Ready to go? Okay. I think we're ready to go. Great. Okay.
Of course, please go ahead and please introduce yourselves.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chair and members of committee. I am Sandra Rodriguez, and I am the Director of Policy and Strategic Planning. And with me is my colleague, Alex Deegan, who is the Interim Director of Client and Business Services, and we're both from Parks and Recreation. We are really pleased to be here today to provide an overview of community use of outdoor public ovens in Toronto parks. Our report was deferred from the last committee meeting. We were directed by council to review the outdoor ovens policy and its procedures to identify and reduce barriers to community access to outdoor ovens, while also considering health and safety. We thought it would be helpful today to walk through a couple of things by way of context and background. We want to provide a history of the outdoor public ovens in Toronto parks, how they are built, how they are currently accessed by community to kind of state how the system works currently, as well as provide a summary of what we heard through our engagement and consultation and discussions with oven champions while developing the report and since the last ECDC committee meeting last month. As well, we want to outline our actions to improve community access through 10 actions that we will walk you through that we will be taking in response to the feedback that we have received. So what are public ovens? These ovens are generally wood-fired brick or cob-covered ovens designed for communities to bake bread, pizza, and lots of other really yummy food. And they are located outdoors. We also have one outdoor tandoor oven, which is made of clay and is traditionally used for Middle Eastern and South Asian cuisine. And that is a very unique oven to our city. I want to speak a little bit about the grassroots leadership that actually makes these ovens possible. Toronto's outdoor ovens were established by community-driven grassroots leadership. And usually they were generally paid through local community fundraising efforts, as well as leveraging infrastructure and social development grants. Thanks to these grassroots initiatives, Toronto has more outdoor ovens in parks than any other city in North America. We currently have 11 ovens across 10 parks, the oldest of which is located at Duffin Grove, and it's 30 years, and the most recent one was built at Detonia Park in 2022. One of the questions that we have received, we received questions about how we actually build an oven in the park. Because an outdoor oven is quite a unique park amenity, and it's not something that is included in our standard park amenities provided by the city. Our current city outdoor oven policy sets out how the city receives, reviews, and decides on applications from community groups interested in building a new outdoor oven in a city park. The outdoor oven may be installed if there's demonstrated community interest and capacity to activate the oven, as well as funding to cover the cost of construction. The cost really does depend on the site as well as the oven design. Parks and Recreation, then, we ensure the safe construction of the oven, as well as then we continue with the maintenance and supporting the operations. Ovens are built in parks are received as donations to the city for all residents to enjoy. The other question we've received a lot of questions about is, can we describe currently how community groups and the public actually are able to access ovens? So the ovens, we have 10 ovens that are available year-round for public use. The current process for a member of the public or a community group to access the oven is by booking a date through our regular parks permit process. This is the same process as used to book other amenities, such as a barbecue pit, a shelter, or a shelter in a park. They must complete a short training video, and once the date is confirmed, a resident or community group is required to pay a permit fee, as well as cover insurance if they do not have any insurance. Currently, our permit fees are about $16 a day, while the insurance can range from $32 to $65 per day, depending on the size of the group. Related to insurance, the more days that you book, there are some opportunities to reduce that insurance rate through kind of bulk days. Once the fees are paid, arrangements are made by city staff to meet with the permit holder on site to unlock the oven, provide them with the tools to use the oven, and help them with the setup. However, as will be summarized in the next slide, we have received very specific feedback about how the current process is working and concrete advice on how to improve it. In addition to accessing a permit for an oven, there are a few ovens that we have, including Riverdale, the oven in Riverdale Park in Edithville, where city staff actually help with the programming of the ovens. Some of the programs include, for example, movie nights, or they may be used for summer camps in the summer. So that's another avenue through which the community can access those ovens. I am now going to turn it over to my colleague Alex, who will actually walk through in detail the feedback that we received about how our current process is working and how we are going to be responding to that feedback, both through what was included in the recommendations in the report, but also through some additional actions. Thank you.
Perfect. So in terms of the community feedback that we've heard, in preparation for this report, we surveyed all 2024 oven permit holders, and we arranged one-on-one conversations with a number of oven champions who are community members who have operated ovens for many years. We heard that Toronto ovens are well-loved but underused. We also heard that the city's current processes include some barriers to use. Specifically, we heard about the following. So fees, although Toronto's permit fees for bake ovens are actually lower than any other city, there is a principle here, and that's that communities which fundraise to build these ovens in the first place should not then have to pay every time that they want to use them. We also heard that insurance is too expensive, the booking process is long and complicated, that staff support is often inconsistent, and that information on how to book ovens and use them is lacking. So further, over this past month, we've talked about the ovens with community members as well as counselors, and we heard that more fundamentally, there's a need to develop trust and connection and a new community development model that will make the most of these special amenities as well as the skills and the passion that the people who develop them bring to the table. So in particular, we heard that there is a strong interest in community groups that are longtime stewards of the ovens, to be able to have access to those ovens on a regular basis under some form of an agreement or an arrangement with the city. Parks and Recreation has experience with these types of longer agreements, and we can work to explore and develop similar simple agreements to collaborate with the oven champions as we move forward. So specifically how we're responding to the feedback that we've heard. So in terms of there's a number of actions that we propose to pursue, some of which are reflected in the report, and a few others, important actions that we're recommending on the basis of more recent feedback that we've heard. Most, if not all, of these actions can be implemented this spring or summer. So the actions in the staff report, enabling longer-term permits for those who want them, so multi-day, weekly, seasonal. Long-term regular oven users should have priority access on their preferred dates. Look to streamline, simplify, shorten the booking process and wait time. Look to deliver consistent, dependable, and experienced day of support, so things like delivery of keys, tools, on-site help. Working directly with oven champions, community of practice, to innovate and activate Toronto's network of outdoor ovens, and support community-led learning and skills development, and update the training video. Going further beyond that, based on recent conversations, looking to allow for long-term agreements for oven users, including recurring days and times of use, publicize public oven use in parks, so working through social media challenging, improving ovens webpage, find ways to make insurance more affordable, and improve transparency through regular reporting on oven use and availability. That brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. It's very helpful to have that presentation here. We are now going to speakers, and then we'll go to questions from members of committee and any visiting counselors that may be interested. I'd like to call Joe Roberts. Welcome to committee. You will have 5 minutes.
It's great to be in a room with people talking about wood ovens. I'm one of the oven champions mentioned, which is a fun new title. Good morning, Chair, councillors, and the members of the committee and everyone else in this room. My name is Jode Roberts, and I'm here with Friends of Christie Pitts Park, also, I guess, an oven champion. Friends of Christie Pitts Park, we're a bunch of neighbors who've been coming together to cook up free events in Christie Pitts Park in the neighborhood for over 15 years. And that includes everything from outdoor movies and arts activities to community potlucks and pizza parties. What we've learned over the years is this, that parks come alive when people are invited to come together, and food is the most magical of ingredients. So there's something special that happens when people gather around a wood-fired oven making fresh bread or tandoor, or flipping pizzas, sharing snacks from different cultures. It smells amazing. I don't know if you've walked into a park when there's an oven that's baking early in the morning, but it is magical. Kids running around, people having opportunities to chat, and many who've never met before. So that's why we're excited that this new community-initiated programming policy, which is a mouthful, includes support for public bake ovens. Simply put, public bake ovens are community building catalysts, and as was mentioned in the staff report, this is something that's unique to Toronto. But increasingly, over the past 15 years of using the wood ovens in Christie Pitts Park, and now there's one wood oven, they're not being used as nearly as much as they could be. Part of the reason is administrative and financial burdens that the city has put in place, again addressed in the staff report. And these includes, for our group especially, permit and insurance fees that small groups like mine can't afford, especially if hosting regular series of events over time. And unclear and clunky permitting processes that feel more like obstacles than invitations. And that's been a key thing, is that over time, it has felt like more of an obstacle to deal with the city to make the magic happen with the ovens than an invitation. And we're hoping that this staff report and what comes out of this really flips that. So we're here to say this is a great step, and let's go a bit further. First, from the first presentation at committee, insurance fees were still included. So if it's a no-fee permit, we'd like it to have no fees. So waiving permit and insurance fees for volunteer-led groups to offer free programming would be what we would like. These are neighbors doing great things with zero budget. Let's not make it harder for them. Second, we'd love to see a staff report in 6 months. Again, in the staff report, they mentioned reporting back. Let's put a timeline to that. So in 6 months, let's check in, see what's working, and adjust if needed. And third, let's track and publish oven use data by location and permit on the city's open data portal. It'll show how these amazing community ovens are being used and where there might be more potential. And as mentioned again in the staff report, this would help build trust. Putting these measures in place will help to build this trust and further empower the oven champions and others. So the public ovens in places like Dufferin Grove and Christie Pitts have shown us what's possible when people are trusted and empowered to bring joy to public space. Let's let the ovens do what they do best, bring warmth and nourishment and bring neighbors together. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant? No, thank you. You have a question of the deputant? Go ahead, Councillor Candeville, questions.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, thank you for your delegation and providing, I guess, a bit of an origin story from your community on the park oven. In your assessment, do the recommendations in the staff report meaningfully address the concerns you outlined?
So they start to address, like there weren't concrete actions in the list of bullets. When the presentation said there's 10 steps we're taking, I thought they'd be practical steps like offering a permit on this schedule for this cost to these groups and like reporting back on a regular. So there are items in that list from the staff report that could tackle the issues that we're having, but I just applied for an oven permit last week and am facing the same kind of administrative hurdles that I have. So do I have confidence that by the end of the summer, this will change things? It's been 15 years and there's a bit of deja vu. I've had these sorts of conversations over time with mostly permitting staff and park staff with a lot of the same wrinkles. So my hope is this is the thrust that actually addresses these things. And I hope that this time it actually happens.
Thank you for sharing that. I think just to be fair to staff, I think they're waiting for the passage of this at council in order to start implementing it. So presumably it is the old model that's being operated. Specifically on the logistics of the permitting and the, I guess, insurance That was my takeaway from your comments as being the biggest hurdle. Is that being addressed in terms of the timing and the language that speaks to the permitting logistics, et cetera?
I'm not an expert in how to structure a relationship between the city and a group like mine. There are precedents. There were other groups that had 5-year permits for use of ovens on a regular basis. And so what we're looking for is a bit of transparency and also confidence that things will happen as we imagine them, that we won't face extra burden or obstacles. If there was a set time period and a use for various groups on set days during a set period, and there was a knowable cost over the course of that, and confidence that staff would support us in doing those are kind of the foundational pieces to making that agreement work. Surely the City of Toronto has agreements like that. I'm not sure what they're called in the nomenclature of the bureaucracy here, but other groups have had those agreements, and it's that type of longer time horizon that allows us to build. Like, I've been invested in my park for 15 years. I'll continue to do that, but it's been a struggle. And if we have certainty that for the next year, for the next 5 years, whatever the time period is, we will know that on every last Sunday we will be able to use the wood oven to do something magical, then we definitely lean into that. And that's the type of relationship that we're hoping to have with the city over this.
And lastly, I think, that is the language outlined in the slide titled Actions in the staff report. Enable longer-term permits to your point right now, and streamlining the booking process. So typically, because oftentimes when you're doing and planning, organizing community events like a pizza day or whatever it is that you do, it's the confirmation that allows you to now market it, et cetera. Typically, what did that last? How long was that process for you to get actual confirmation you can use it?
It really depends, and there's also the added wrinkle that there's discretion that parks permit staff have when receiving a wood oven permit. Sometimes you end up, I was doing pizza nights through a charity that I work for, and they were bigger events, and so they fell under the special events permit, which is a much more from a community organizer perspective. I don't know if you've gotten a special events permit, but the to-do list, the checklist is long, and it's more expensive. So sometimes, just arbitrarily, you end up, instead of just using having to apply for a wood oven permit, which we're dealing with now, you'll be skipped into the special events permit, which if you need to submit it 8 weeks in advance. And the permit we applied for last week, we were told we can't have an oven permit because we had 40 people. And so then that's a special event, and that takes 8 weeks. And we didn't apply within 8 weeks, so we can't use the oven for this community event. So that there's some discretion that is right now being applied and has historically been applied by permit staff that made the process longer. But if you're just an individual that's applying to get a wood oven, the permitting process isn't that difficult. But just as a last anecdote, I went on the city website and put the words wood oven into the search bar. Yeah. And guess which result? It was the 71st result was the one that took me to the page for permits. So I think there's some things we can do to just make it a little more efficient.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions of the deputant? I'll just say thank you for being here and for attending the meeting that I convened with and invited staff to, and I hope that you'll see some important elements of your deputation in the motion that I'll be moving.
Great, thanks.
Thanks. Questions of staff? Vice Chair Carroll, please.
Thanks. I do have questions. I love the report. I like the direction we're going in because insurance is the biggest cost. And so, getting some of the other things out of the way. But I want to get at, because here we've done an exhaustive review, and I appreciate the report. It has to stay neutral. You don't want to, be evaluating the users of the ovens, just whether or not they work as facilities. But I'm wondering if you can give us a little insight here. If this is successful and people say, this is working great now, I want an oven, which ovens work best? The ones where a community has said, we would use an outdoor oven if you were to build one in our area, or the ones where the councillor just had a Section 37 dream and then you wait for the users to come? I can't really tell that by looking through the evaluation, because I think you hesitated to go there.
Through the chair, so from the experience of the ovens that we have in place, definitely those that are, like, the success comes from the community grassroots support that the ovens have had. Everything from the idea, the conception of having an oven, to then actually supporting, programming the oven, maintaining the oven. And really, because they are such a unique amenity for a park, without that focus activation that community brings to it, you would need to have that activation in some way. And,
Right.
And so this is like the important role that not only the oven champions, but the broader community plays. I think what we're looking to do in this report is strengthen the city's role in that activation, because through the consultation, we recognize that there are things that, that need improvement.
So the one that I know best in the suburban context is the one at Edithvale. And that was definitely the councillor had a dream. He wouldn't mind me saying that. But my impression of it when I go there is that it really is, it's sort of a camp amenity. The camps are using them. And then it's available if someone wants to permit it. But how do we generate permit users? Having used it, is there a, if you want to use the oven, we're going to show you how to use it. We're going to give you some pointers and hopefully generate more permit users. And out of that, you maybe come up with a group that wants to be a full-on champion. How do we generate champions?
That's a really great question. Through the chair, that's a really great question. One of the things related to just the activation, as I was mentioning about the ovens, is that one of the things we did identify when we were developing the report was that the ovens are generally underutilized as an asset.
Yeah.
And that part of the strategy would be to actually working with the oven champions and the community of practice to really kind of publicize and make people understand that the ovens are available for permit, how to best use them. We're looking to update the training videos. We are implementing the zero permit fee that would be effective after council, should council adopt the report. Really trying to put measures in place to kind of broaden not only understanding, but also just knowledge that these ovens are available in these parks.
Because a lot of people just walk right by it and say, what is that thing? And then their kids tell them, we had pizza at camp. Yeah. So a training video would give people pointers on, here's how you do it. There's a couple of good recipes that are doable with items you pre-prepped at home. So they get what champions already know from years of experience. They get a little overview, and then they can test out whether or not they want to become one.
Yeah. I think in some ways we're actually supporting oven champions who have been playing a really, have been active in operating these ovens for many years, and kind of amplifying that message more broadly. And the training video, as we understand, does need some updates, so we're prioritizing that.
My last question, would we ever get to a point, I know it's a resource issue, I know it more than most, of course, but could we ever get this to a model that, similar to a community garden model, that there's a coterie of animators whose job it is to animate, and so there's a staff support that sort of takes what happens in a champion oven and animates another to say, I'm on tap. If you want to try your first ever, baking day, there's an animator from Parks who's going to get you through that, and then you'll decide if you want to build your group around it. Yeah.
Through the chair, that's an interesting model. I think right now, with the establishment of a community of practice that, with the city, will be an opportunity to kind of do that co-learning, if you will, which already happens, but kind of have a place where we'll be able to share ideas, look at opportunities for improvements, things that are working well, things that are not working well. Some of you mentioned Edithvale, and specifically, I mean, there is a component to some of our events where staff are more involved in programming, so certainly that could serve as maybe some learnings from. So I would say that would be something to really kind of an opportunity to explore with the community of practice and the Oven Champions.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Councillor Candeville?
Thank you, Chair, and through you to staff. Just to pick up on the concerns outlined by the delegate, with the proposed changes, how does staff look to address, the multiple challenges if a community group is organizing something for more than 40 people and they've got to apply for multiple permits? How will the proposed changes give them more expediency and a better process?
So thank you for the question through the chair. Following the adoption of the report, we'll be sitting with our permit staff to go through exactly step by step what the existing process is today and looking to remove any unnecessary steps in that application process. We've also eliminated the fee and we'll continue working on the insurance requirements to see what's possible to continue to eliminate those fees or reduce them where possible.
I think to be specifically, delegate spoke to an 8-week time wait for a permit that's considered special event that's more than 40 people. How are you going to address that?
So through the chair, I think we will look to bring that down where possible. We have to look to see exactly why it's tripping into a special event. Sometimes ovens are added on to larger park activations, which do require other approvals, sometimes from other city divisions as well. But where possible, we will look to bring that timeline down to the extent we can. I would say as well, we'll be sitting with the newly formed Oven Champions table or Oven Champions group or community of practice, I forget what we're calling it, forgive me, to hear those stories and use them as examples and sit with gentlemen like yourself to better understand the process today and where we can get better.
Thank you. I think it's important we acknowledge that there's multiple moving parts when you're trying to increase participation and use of the ovens, especially ideally with events that have a lot of people and you're getting maximum use of the ovens. Switching paths, I think it's clear, you need community support, organized grassroots relationships to activate and promote public oven use. Having said that, there's some language that speaks to promoting the existence. I had no idea we had public ovens until last ECDEV meeting. So what are your thoughts in exactly that action item?
Through the chair, so we agree we want to amplify the message of that these ovens are, we have 11 across the city, actually 2 of those are at Dufferin Grove. We want to leverage our social media channels. We want to update our website. We will, look at strategies with the community of practice to see what else we can do to kind of get the message out that these are available in parks. Working with counselors, the counselors' offices have newsletters, which we can then, so I think we're going to be developing a bit of a communications plan that would allow us to then kind of have a number of different strategies as part of that.
Gotcha.
So that to better publicize the ovens in our parks.
And what are your thoughts on, once and if that's successful, you've got a greater awareness, especially in communities that don't have public ovens, like Scarborough, for example. What are your thoughts on next steps once and if there is public appetite for expansion of public ovens?
Through the chair, certainly if there is an interest from a community group who wants to look at a possible oven in a park, I'm happy to have that discussion. We know that there are wards, for example, where there are redevelopments happening that, in parks that maybe there are community, potentially a community group may be interested in stewarding such an amenity. So yes, we're definitely open to kind of expanding it. We just want to make sure that when installing and through all of the collective effort to actually install them, that we set them up for success.
Of course. Thank you, staff. That's it.
Are there any other questions of staff? Speakers?
Councillor Moy, sorry, a question
Oh,
of
go
staff.
ahead, Councillor Moyes.
Sorry. In regards to the ovens, can you remind us how they are paid for?
Through the chair, so the ovens most of the ovens have been fundraised. There's been local fundraising efforts by community groups to fund them. In addition, sometimes there's also other funding sources like grants that they've applied to, for example, through the SDFA Partnership Opportunities Legacy Fund, as well as some councillors have also exercised Section 37, so some funds available to them to facilitate oven installation and construction.
Okay, thank you, because I think that's important to put in the record. That's how they're funded. Thanks.
Councillor Fletcher, questions of staff?
Just in rating the importance of having a group that gets itself organized and its quest is to have a pizza oven. That's just a number one thing, to have a group that's driving that in a particular park, then working with the councillor, then looking for the funding, getting all the approvals. Would I be right about that?
Through the chair, yes.
And it's the same with the farmer's market, that they get together, they have all their process, and then they're selecting a park that they think will meet their needs as a market that will have a lot of traffic. So many of these things are community-driven, and the ovens are part of that. Is there any idea to remove that and just try putting them everywhere to see what happens, or are we still focused on having it as a community-based opportunity?
Through the chair, our focus is to establish ovens through community-based opportunities, absolutely.
And if people know that, is there somewhere, if you have a couple of people who might be interested somewhere, how would they access and get the information to get more people, and who'd help them with that?
So groups who may be interested in seeing the opportunities within a location for an oven, certainly through as I mentioned, there sometimes are opportunities where there's already something happening in a park, for example, where there's a development or redevelopment that actually through those consultation processes where an idea or a need may emerge that then can be developed with the councillor, with the community, and certainly depending on the context, city staff.
But the other thing is I think there's some ovens that councillors have just taken money and built. They're not as successful as ones that are, in fact, they're probably not very successful at all, because you have to have your folks, that's their passion.
Through the chair, yeah, the most successful ovens, the most used are the ones that have very strong.
Pardon me? The most successful ovens?
The most successful ovens and the most used are the ones that have very strong community, a strong community grassroots-based surrounding them, enabling them.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff? I don't think all my colleagues have asked all the questions, so I thank you for that. Speakers? Maybe I'll go first. I have a motion. While it's being displayed, I'll explain what this is. This is to direct the General Manager of Parks and Recreation to do, first of all, establish an outdoor ovens community of practice, which is, it includes the oven champions and any residents interested across the city that want to bring and lean into this community development and activation approach that our outdoor ovens policy is highlighting, and a commitment to operate and continue to use that from those community members. B, that it extends the option for not-for-profits, charities, and community groups that have been involved in the establishment of and operation of these amenities in a local park, with a local park oven, to explore long-term use agreements with the City of Toronto for their activation, including commitments on recurring days and times of use, bulk insurance options. And the training and knowledge transfer piece was just so important. We've heard in answers that are required for additional oven use by both city employees and outside organizations. See that there's data collection on oven use, including through event permits, so we're tracking that, and that we make that information publicly available. And D, that we explore opportunities to expand education and community awareness of park ovens to areas across the city with a focus on areas that are currently underserved by this amenity. And that there's a report back on these activities in the first quarter of 2026. The second part is a deletion of the existing section 5.5 and its replacement with this piece, which is about not-for-profits, charities, and community groups who are interested in establishing long-term use agreements for these ovens. Approach the City of Toronto's Parks and Recreation Division to pursue them in consultation with the ward councillor, and of course the details of the agreement would be included, the conditions would be included in the agreement. I just want to start by saying that this is an important report because, as you heard, it's been 14 years since we've had this report. So there was a lot to consider and a lot that's been learned over time by staff and also by community members. When this report first came, there were excellent questions about what is the internal, like what is the fulcrum of the idea here? What is the philosophical commitment to what, and how does this work? How is it that this is coming from the ground up as an idea through animation, through community development that starts with the spark in community members, and it's a pretty diverse group. Very different conditions in Dufferin Grove than in the Thorncliffe Park community. So as a response, we carefully listened to the deputations, read all of the submissions, and I was very pleased to convene the existing park champions, and I would say park oven experts. And with the participation and collaboration of staff, we worked through some important elements, I think, and I think that's one of the features of this work. I should have started my time. Is that it's going to be organic, co-created, and collaborative. That's what a community of practice is. It starts from the experience of practitioners, and the beauty of that is that it can expand, and I think it can address some of the big questions that have been asked. We found common ground, and that's what's in this motion. The community of practice idea is that it's a community development approach, and I was pleased to see the commitment from staff to lean into this. It's animation and activation based, and I think one of the important elements around the question of how do you expand knowledge of this amenity of park ovens is through peer-to-peer relationships and mentoring and partnerships that emphasize community leadership and the collaboration of the Parks Division to support that community leadership, to meet people where they are and to provide this knowledge transfer with staff, but also among community organizations, which I find very exciting. I think that we have to consider that, these parks are becoming increasingly important to people as more of us live in apartment buildings, as we seek connection. And the animation and the leadership that's demonstrated, farmers markets, as Councillor Fletcher mentioned, the Women's Bazaar in Thorncliffe Park, all of the different theater activities, et cetera, in Dufferin Grove, these are the areas I know best, are really building community and inviting people in across their differences. So that's a wonderful thing. I just want to thank all of the oven champions and all of those residents who really participated in thoughtful deliberation of how we can lift this up, expand its use, and also build the understanding across the city, and also the willingness of this community of practice, these practitioners, to mentor and support other community groups, they've been very generous over time, and I think we need to acknowledge that. That's just self-initiated commitment to community building and parks. I also want to thank all of the councillors who sat with us and deliberated and contributed to the motion. It's members not on this committee, members of this committee. And finally, thank you to staff for your willingness to come alongside, listen, and problem solve together. I think we've gotten to a place where I hope you see that we're thinking very carefully and thoughtfully, not just about the Parks Division leading and doing, but also just walking alongside this community-based action. Any questions about the motion?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So can I get the motion up again, just to make sure that I'm that I need to ask the question? So, okay. So I didn't look as carefully at this stuff until I got to the end where it said striking all of 5.5. So did the clauses before here, did they, I don't know if they do. This is a lot. Let me just ask the question in general then. We're striking a lot of the things that used to be in 5.5 that were, you know, things that a group could look at before they even ask. You're going to be responsible, or you're going to be this, you're going to be that. And if all those things make sense to you, contact us and we will work with you to see if you're a user group. So we're striking all of those. So is the intent of the motion that now it's just, if you feel like you want to be in Oven's group, approach us and then we'll work out the terms? Is that what we're getting at?
Yeah, the idea is not to set up an upfront barrier, but to actually ensure that we're providing the support through the community of practice, building up knowledge, making it easier for the existing Park Oven champions to operate. So it's simultaneously holding the tension that you need a local group that champions this and is willing to commit to animation and operation of it, because it's complex. At the same time that we don't want to create a barrier if there's no existing park group for the purpose of equity, and also because there are groups that will need extra support to understand. So it's a bit of a more community development approach than having all of the cards and all of the responsibility held by the Parks Division.
I can appreciate that, but there are a few bare minimum things that you want to know from the get-go, else why bother? Because if not, if we don't at least have the bare minimum guidelines, and maybe they're in those earlier clauses and I'm just too overwhelmed to see them, but you want to have a few bare minimum conditions that a group knows they've got to meet before they open the conversation, or you're setting the local councillor up and the community up to think those people are just evil and they just say no to everyone. When in fact, there are some bare minimum conditions you got to meet. And you really, as a community group, you want to have that conversation before you go to talk to the public service.
My understanding,
and get into a confrontation.
Yeah, my understanding, it's not that those things are no longer required or available to groups to know, but that putting certain things up front actually is a deterrent to even considering expansion, like actually getting involved, and that there is an opportunity for, I don't also think that a group, like there's been the problem that maybe you're identifying, that there's like a rush of groups coming and saying, I want to start a park of, and I think
No, not a rush of groups, just any group. If we're setting them up that they don't have any idea what they need to contemplate as a group, we're saying, just call us. We sound like we're open to anything, when in fact, because we're talking about a thing that is a fire in our park, it isn't that simple. So are there any bare minimum conditions that you want to inform a group of before they call parks?
Well, I worked with staff who felt comfortable with this approach, having deliberated on, done the review and listened to community and considered the operational piece. But I think maybe we can hold this down and have this conversation.
Yeah, I just want to read the other clauses.
To ensure that you're comfortable with this.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions of the mover? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Bravo, for finding some common ground through this motion. Is your sense the language here is clear enough to help resolve the challenges of multiple permits that were shared by the delegate?
I think that what we're initiating is a pretty significant shift, and the willingness of staff to find the solutions that are going to work to ensure that there is like a seasonal permit or a longer term permit. It starts to consider questions of insurance, but there's quite a lot. One of the things that we're doing here is solving problems together, and this is, I think, the willingness of staff to take all this work on that we're identifying from A to to see. And then in addition to making immediate changes once the policy is approved, as you indicated, to report back in the first quarter to see what else has to be considered.
And secondly, what are your expectations with Part D in terms of substantive and effective public awareness opportunities and promotion of public ovens?
I think one of the things that's become clear is that there has to be first a group that has come together, and that precedes the park oven question. I think the community of practice, which is made up of oven champions, will be a key part of helping to increase awareness, as there is a network of park users. There are organizations that are interested in ensuring that there's expanded park animation, particularly in parts of the city where there hasn't been that history, it hasn't been the same council or support, or there hasn't been that kind of connection in the past. So it is a community development approach that will be supported by city staff through their efforts, but not led by Parks and Recreation.
Just to kind of unpack that a little bit more, it strikes me as a bit of a chicken egg, right? You do have the clear need to have a community group champion, but you also need awareness, right? So in Part D, is the intention, will that language capture the directive to staff to have effective communication strategies to create awareness in the broader City of Toronto community, especially in areas that don't have or are underserved?
Oh, I think what you heard in the presentation is staff have, compared to the last committee meeting, this has become very clear that there will be efforts made to ensure that areas of the city, parks where there is an awareness of this idea that you can have a park oven, that there will be work done, and that one of the things that will be shared is the promotional materials, the communications strategy, in addition to supporting the community of practice as a resource for people to consult with and consider, so that people understand what's required beyond technical elements is the actual community coming together to create the basis for that.
Thank you.
Thanks. I think that Councillor Carroll's, Vice Chair Carroll's questions are still being answered, and we're working on that. So
Yeah,
I
I'm
say,
good. I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't have to hold down the item?
No, if we can go to speakers, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Fletcher, speak.
Well, I think it's very good that your motion says if folks would like to do this, that there's a little bit more help to figure it out. But it's a really important factor that it is a community that really decides it's something that they want. And Councillor Carroll pointed out one that was built without any community support, which nobody uses. So it might be great to have it, but the whole idea is to build community. And part of establishing it is the building of community in that park. And it's not for every park. If there's already user groups, that's something that they might want to do. It's the same with fire pits. People have come together to have a fire pit, then they get a license in order to have marshmallows, whatever, fire at the rink, and it's worked out quite well. The city, Parks Department, and I applaud you for thinking ahead on this, because even looking at markets, when they were first established, even though they're coming from the community, but also from the Greenbelt Foundation and many others that were supporting parks-based markets, the difficulty in establishing those in parks was quite great, and I happened to chair the committee at that time. They couldn't get electricity, they couldn't get run cables, they couldn't park near the park, and we all know that if you're going to be having a market, there's many different goods that you have to be able to deliver there. So the number of hurdles to establish what is a fantastically successful operation, which are markets and parks, was very hard. And I will admit, sometimes they come and go. You've got ones that people, they bite off more than they can chew with the farmer's market, and they go out of business. They do it for a couple of years and then they can't sustain it because it's a big operation. But these are small things in parks. They should be successful and they should be used if there are groups that want to bring people together. So it is a parks operation, but now with our 2 new DCMs, we have a specialist in community development, a specialist in parks, and maybe it's time to think about how to make that a community operation in different places where we have community development plans, progress, and activities underway. Is it something for which there's an interest? Because food does bring everybody together. It's just a fact of life. You can have a meeting. If you have a meeting with food, you get a lot more people to come there. So it's a great organizing opportunity to build community, to build safe communities, to bring people together, particularly in areas where they don't do that normally. So I think this is a good step forward. I look forward to hearing that we've established community groups and more markets throughout various parts of the city. And I'm reminded that we're now getting our briefing on alcohol in parks, and that was, ooh, can't do that. But now it's established across the city. It's working very well. So what's that Star Trek phrase? Go where no man has gone before. We keep doing that all the time with these innovations. The fact that we have more and more, why am I looking at you?
I'm just in shock. I'm just remembering how loudly I was yelled at by many of my colleagues.
For doing what?
Moving the motion on alcohol in parks.
Oh, no,
Still
well.
got scars.
Yeah, okay, well, that was different, that we can fight that out later, but we all thought we should have that, perhaps not with the motion you moved, Councillor, if you wanted to get there. But since we all wanted it, maybe not the way you brought it up. Anyway, I don't think we should fight publicly here, Councillor Carroll.
Oh, I'm not fighting.
I'm not either. I'm just stating some facts. I'm running out of time. But anyway, I just want to say that all these things that we keep moving forward, and we have people in our communities that are fierce. When we look at Thorncliffe and we look at what the women did in Thorncliffe, they're fierce, they're resolute. We have to support them, but we can't make them up. They have to be there. The leaders are there, and when the leaders are there, we can support. And let's have a drink in Riverdale Park, Councillor Carroll. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Moise and Councillor Candeville?
Thank you, and I just want to thank you, Chair Bravo, for these amendments. My predecessor, Lee Pam McConnell, when we revitalized Regent Park, one of the Section 37 funds was used to have an oven there. And I have to say to you, though, even though the community advocated for it and wanted it, it was not actually well utilized. It was not easy to access, and there were a lot of hurdles in place. And through fast forward now to 2025, we actually are working with a third party, Fred Victor, to actually help administer the oven, and so that the community can use it more on a regular basis without any hurdles. So this motion that you've brought forth actually addresses a lot of that. And I think those changes you've made will actually help in other parts of the city. And to your point, if more community wants an oven, then it should be grassroots led with the support of staff. So I see, if for someone who's lived it, I can see the benefits of these changes that you're talking about. So I'm in full support of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Candeville to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I think for many perhaps watching, if any, think, oh, this is a really silly item, ovens in parks. But I think it draws very clearly to structural questions about the City of Toronto. One, are we serving our end users? And I think we heard clearly from at least one delegate today that there are structural operational challenges with how we serve our end users, and we heard specific examples. And this, I think, is point to reflect on not just on ovens and parks, but broadly as multiple programs and services that we deliver, whether it's through PFR, CRCs, or a host of areas of service. Are we serving our end users properly? And I think this gives us reflection for that. Secondly, the other big structural question is, who are we serving? And there's a clear discrepancy and disparity with where services and programs lie in this city. And it's a question that is very clear, that we need community support, grassroots organized voices to help activate space. But it reflects and reveals a chicken and egg conundrum, because there are groups, and when I spoke to this issue at last month's ECDEV, we know, and Councillor Myers, I think, articulated as well, groups that routinely use Morningside Park, a very big park in Scarborough, Thompson Park, Bluffers Park, cultural groups, East African, multiple South Asian, West Indian, Caribbean groups that would love to use these, as we've revealed through conversations anecdotally, but are not aware. And this is why the questions and the language in the motion are imperative to how and who we serve. And as a councillor representing an area that doesn't have public ovens, we recognize the need to work in conjunction with staff to have an effective communication strategy to create awareness. And I think areas that we can include and work together, Dantonia Park, which borders Scarborough, allows us the opportunity to create engagement and awareness, to create use and grow this over a multi-year strategy. And that, I think, ultimately is where staff work and representatives, councillors, and community groups can come together to create awareness and build the social and obviously eventual physical infrastructure to support the success of these ovens. But again, coming back to what does this conversation reveal about who we serve in our city, as one I think that we should extend, especially with 2 new DCMs, to the host of CRC programming and other services and programs across our city. And I think that lens is imperative to how we review what we do, who we serve, what do we provide across our city, right? And I think, you know, there's the tendency or proclivity to kind of to protect or preserve the status quo. And I think that's a question that deserves a serious reflection on how we as a city operate and who we serve. So appreciate all the work. It was a fascinating exercise from last month to now to see this conversation evolve, because I think it says more about our culture than really about who has a public oven in a park. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll?
Yeah, and I did review the motion. I'm sorry I don't have my CMP here. I would have looked at it in advance. I was just concerned, and it's at the end of the clause where it says terms and conditions will be outlined in an agreement. So people will understand that they're making an agreement and they're taking on a set of responsibilities. That's important. And it's not for me a matter, it's not a matter about access to cultural groups. Many of these ovens, most of these ovens came out of conversations with those very multicultural groups. The one in RV Burgess Park, what a happy ending. But as often happens with amenities that you put in parks, they have a life cycle. We can do as much community development as we want. Same thing happens with community gardens. Community gardens are less of a risk because, you know, as staff always say in that program, yeah, we'll put it in a community garden for any group, because if the group should disappear, and they do over time, sometimes just disappear, we'll just turn it over and put the sod back down and voila, it's back to its original state. And it's an open space in a park. So no harm, no foul. Yes, let's see if you can do a community garden. But the thing with ovens, I'm glad we're looking at them because they get developed with passion. Some thrive forever. Some have a whole lot of passion around them for a couple of years, and then that person who is willing to make the dough at home or do the no-knead bread in the oven, but now you have to take the bowl home to wash it, and because it was sitting there at your event, it's now encrusted with dried dough that they can't get off. And over time, they decide, I'm over it, don't want to do this anymore. And if that group disappears, or that couple of people with passion, now we have not a garden that can be turned over and resodded, but we have this brick thing in the park that's no one's using. And if it has a couple of seasons with no one using it, it becomes that broken, ugly thing in the park and a symbol of our failure, which makes people crazy. So, you know, that there will be terms and conditions, and that there now is the mindset that, and if that group dissipates, who do we train to be the next group? Is an important piece, because if you're going to build the amenity, you really want, it is a chicken and an egg thing. You want it to start successfully, and that picture of success means that you got a better chance of getting the next group of champions that you will need. You will need. People age out of these things, so that's great. I just wanted to say the one other thing I wanted to address was the issue of permit times. Yeah, we have a systemic few problems that we have to fix. I don't disagree with Councillor Candeval on that. But for me, how do we fix it? I have no problem with us saying that if you want to do a big event in a park and you're going to use our facility where you're going to be starting a fire, we want you to apply a long time in advance. To me, it's not so much that they have to wait 8 weeks for the yes, it's that they have no line of sight during that time. So if we had a permit process where they've said, if you're doing a big event, you need to plan for it, you need to promote, you need to organize your group. So you should be asking us, if you're having an event for 100 people in a park, you should be asking us 8 weeks in advance. But then they can't wait 7 weeks for the yes. So yes, let's have a time frame. The bigger the event, the earlier we'd like to know about it. But then throughout the process, give them line of sight for what the hell is going on in the process of getting to yes. And that is what is missing. People phone in, say, so I sent you that thing. Is the answer yes? Well, we don't know yet. Call us back. We don't know yet. We don't know yet. And now they don't know if they should promote. Or what do we promote? We still don't know if we even have this park. So a process that they have full line of sight to the whole time it's going on, I think they'd be far more patient within it, and they'd be accommodating whatever our parks needs. What do you need from us? Tell us up front. Don't say, we'll look at it, and then wait 3 weeks to tell them, we think you need a cop. That's information they could have used 3 weeks ago, because they'd be realizing they need to fundraise for that or whatever. It's that line of sight in the process for the bigger events. And maybe looking at what is the trigger, because 40 people isn't actually that many people anymore in a park. We had 40 people this Sunday standing in a park in Mississauga for my mother-in-law's 90th birthday. It's pretty easy to pull together 90 people, and it's still, you're all still related. But if we're getting to the 75, 100, we get that parks needs advance notice. But for what? And what hurdles am I going over? Tell me all the way through the process. To me, that is the change in the process that would get you a lot of friends in the user groups. Those are my comments. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other speakers? So on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Item is amended. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, everyone. Now we're going on to another simple subject. Downtown Coyote Action Plan, EC 20.4, and we have speakers for that. I'd like to call the first speaker, Nicole Corrado. Online? Nicole Corrado is online. Welcome to the committee, Nicole. You have 5 minutes. Is Nicole Corrado, are you available to speak?
She's there, but she doesn't appear to have her audio connected.
Your audio is not currently connected, Nicole Corrado, so we're going to go to the next speaker, and if you're able, we'll come back to you at the end of the list. The next speaker is Liz White, Animal Alliance of Canada Fund, in person. Welcome to committee. You have 5 minutes.
So thank you very much for the offer of an opportunity to speak to the committee members and to provide some advice as to how to address and resolve human-wildlife conflict between residents in Liberty Village and their dogs and coyotes. We commend the city and Toronto Animal Services for the work that has been done thus far. It is clear that a lot of time and energy and resources have been put into this issue to resolve it with modern, effective techniques. The question for the committee to consider is, what kind of city do we want our city to be? Some residents want the coyotes to be trapped and euthanized or shot. This is a divisive option. Additionally, it will not solve the problem, as many communities have found out doing exactly the same things. If coyotes from Liberty Village were killed, coyotes from other areas would simply move in. The extensive construction and accompanying disturbance from the Ontario Line and Ontario Place continue to drive wildlife, including coyotes, to other areas. So therefore, we support the recommendations of the March 2025 Consolidated Summary Report, Expert Panel on Coyotes in Fort York and Liberty Village, prepared by Lura Consulting. We support the panel recommendations of April 24th, 2025, update on city actions around coyotes downtown, and we encourage the committee to recommend the formation of a wildlife coexistence team to offer aversion training sessions to members of the community in conjunction with Toronto Animal Services and other knowledgeable organizations. And that committee or team would apply to other types of conflicts that occur in Toronto between humans and wildlife. The one last thing I would say, I understand that there is some consideration for one coyote to be dispatched, put it politely. I would ask the council or the committee to consider that this is breeding and birthing season for coyotes, and it's quite possible that somebody has a denning operation going on. We don't know which committee, we don't know how many males and females, at least not that I've read. That makes it concerning that if one of the coyotes is killed, it might be the male that's supplying the female and the kits with, or the cubs with food. We simply don't know. The one coyote, I understand, has mange, and that may be a triggering issue, but I think we need to find a more compassionate way to deal with that particular animal if we can, given the season that we are in with these coyotes. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Councillor Fletcher, questions?
Good morning.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I've just been looking at a number of the bites, human bites from coyotes, which I'm sure concerns you. Concerns me, different than a skunk or a raccoon, which probably isn't going to be so aggressive or predatory. And years ago, we worked together to reduce the cormorant population on Leslie Spit. Do you have any ideas about, just because I understand the abhorrence to trapping, killing, dispatching, as you say, kind of population control ideas that would mean that coyotes aren't proliferating in these urban spaces because of the attacks on humans, the bites to humans, and also just to animals as well.
I think it's very unusual to have the number of bites that we've seen in Liberty Village and Fort York because most coyotes stay away from people. Most people don't interact with coyotes. And so the number of bites or negative interactions that might occur between humans and coyotes are pretty rare given the number of coyotes that exist in Toronto. If you look at Chicago, for example, different city, but they estimate that there are 3,000 to 4,000 coyotes living in downtown Chicago. And people just don't ever see them or don't really know that they're around. I think we have a situation in Fort York and Liberty Village that is about a compressed area where people and their dogs and coyotes are interacting. And the coyotes have been displaced we think, from Ontario Place and the Ontario line. I would suspect if we just let things evolve, if we can prevent bites and let things evolve, that these coyotes will disappear and they won't be around to bother people in the way that they're bothering them now, because it's a much too pressured situation for coyotes to be in to actually survive and thrive.
That's an interesting perspective. I've just gone through 311 and seen that in 2024, there were 10 bites, and they weren't all in the Liberty Village area.
Right.
10 human bites, and there were 47 animal bites by coyotes.
Right.
And then stalking, 331 cases of stalking. So it's quite intense at the moment. I can see that. So just population control, you think that they'll just finish off, that
They'll leave.
there's nothing that's necessary to do, they'll leave. But what about people feeding them because they think they're cute?
Well, that's a big issue, including in the community where there are negative interactions between coyotes and humans. The Toronto Animal Services have done a pretty amazing job in that area talking about don't feed coyotes. But the problem is that there are also garbage bins that are not properly cared for and all sorts of different things. So there has to be, talking about communities and ovens, this is a community issue. We need to get together we need to convince the community that this is an issue that can be resolved if everybody works together. It's been demonstrated in other communities around the world that these interactions, not just with coyotes, but other animals, that it can be resolved without tending towards lethal management.
Yes, so working together around not feeding, around businesses being more careful, around keeping your beloved pet on their leash. Because
yes, under a short leash, not an extended leash.
Not your long leash.
Yeah, exactly.
While this is happening, and have a perspective of when that might be over.
Yeah.
But got it. So I'm hearing, thank you.
You're welcome.
Always. Thank you.
Of the debutant, I have a question about the long leash problem. Can you comment on, if you're able, on how putting a dog on a long leash can be problematic beyond coyotes, since you have been thinking about this?
Dogs can be triggers to coyotes, to many wildlife, but they are definitely a trigger to coyotes. What is recommended by people who are into the aversion treatment non-lethal approach is that the long leash allows the dog to go out way beyond the ability for the person who has the dog to protect that dog. And so what is recommended is you have a short leash. You have it right beside you. You keep that right there. You make yourself big, loud, and noisy, all those sorts of things. And that generally tends to diminish the interaction, or certainly, sort of push it away.
Thank you. I'll ask staff about this as well. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Malik, questions of the deputant?
Liz, for for speaking to us today and for your response to the questions. I do want to offer that, and you will know this well, how deeply people care about their pets, especially in our downtown communities where we have a density of population and pets and very limited green space. We don't have backyards, and that loss of habitat is really important. And one of the most concerning aspects of the experience with coyotes and how prolonged it's been is that there's an increase in frequency and severity. And as residents have been taking extra precautions to keep their pets safe, that actually hasn't been a deterrent or curbed the amount of incidents that we've seen. So I know you mentioned that, you know, this is not something new in other jurisdictions. We saw the expert panel speak to this, but in Toronto it is unprecedented. And the comparison of the numbers between our downtown neighborhoods, particularly the two that you mentioned, and the rest of the city is jarring. So, you know, from what we're seeing and what staff has recognized is that this is, we're in a whole different situation and scenario that we've been before. And that also means that the same tactics and approaches have to be reviewed, and we have to be doing something different to respond to this unprecedented situation.
Was that a
I mean, you know, you've mentioned your extensive kind of experience with these situations with human and wildlife conflict, and just being able to speak to, you know, the situation that we have in front of us. And the reason why this report is in front of us is because we are in a situation that is unprecedented in the city of Toronto, and where other comparators from other jurisdictions have not actually provided us with a sufficient template. We actually have to be approaching this in a new way. And any advice on that?
I think the problem probably is quite different down in Liberty Village and Fort York areas because of the density of population and the, as you say, the lack of green space for people to have their dogs run at large. I think the difficulty is that the community became very upset right at the very beginning, and it was difficult to talk them into becoming a more proactive community in trying to protect their dogs from the coyotes. And I have to say, we're an animal protection group, so it makes me incredibly sad to know that there have been some dogs there that have been killed by coyotes. But I don't think that that makes it right for us to then target the coyotes unless we've tried absolutely everything. And you're right, maybe we have tried everything, but I suspect not. And I suspect that we may be able to pursue other ideas from some of the experts around the various communities that have done this work, such as Brent Patterson from the Ministry of Natural Resources, who has done an incredible amount of work in this area. I leave it up to council. I mean, it's ultimately your decision what to do, but I think we should try everything before we get into lethal management.
So I just have a final question.
Yeah.
And I've been on the ground with the community, and no one has been careless about responding to the situation, especially as we saw the spike in incidents. I just want to reassure you that the community has taken this very seriously, as has staff and myself. You did mention, you know, the kind of triggering event that has pushed and displaced coyotes into downtown communities and communities along the rail corridor. Can you please speak to what the province's responsibility is in this? You know, with Ontario Place, we know very clearly there wasn't an appropriate environmental assessment. You know, it didn't give the city or communities an opportunity to prepare well. And, you know, that's a really important piece of our advocacy. We know that this won't be the first time we see coyotes in neighborhoods where they have not existed before. And we also know that that is an outcome of provincial redevelopment of a very significant habitat, over 800 trees that was home to a lot of wildlife, including coyotes.
What would you like me to respond to?
My question is about what you see as the province's responsibility when it comes to situations like this.
Last question.
The province really doesn't have a lot of responsibility in this regard unless people have talked about having the coyotes captured and.
Sorry, this is specifically, there was no environmental assessment
Sorry,
done.
I think that
And
was.
sorry, that was my question, not about the legislation
Oh,
governing
the environmental
coyotes.
assessment?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that was a big mistake. Terrible. I mean, but, we see these issues being railroaded by the Ontario government, and it's done before anybody has any say about it. But destroying, it looks like, when you look at what Ontario Place looks like now, it looks like a bomb went off on it. And the end result is terrible. Terrible for the community that's living through the coyote there, terrible for the coyotes that have nowhere else to go and have simply been displaced. And I think on that basis, I would urge committee and council to look at this resolution as compassionately as we can.
Okay. The next speaker is Ruby Cooner. Is Ruby Cooner online? Welcome to committee, Ruby Cooner. You have 5 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Ruby Cooner, and I'm here on behalf of the Coyote Safety Coalition, as well as on behalf of the residents from Liberty Village, Fort York, and other affected areas. I want to take a minute to remind everyone that we have coexisted with these coyotes for a number of years with minimal issues. So things like garbages, possible feeding, some off-leash dogs, these situations have existed for years. I think it's important for us to acknowledge that it was the destruction of Ontario Place and loss of habitat that did exacerbate this issue. We also have the data, whether it's 311 data or the data that we've been collecting with residents, that show the spike in incidents that correlate with the destruction of Ontario Place and continue to escalate since then. Further, I've spoken to a number of experts that are aware of the Ontario Place destruction. It's not just that their habitat was lost, it's the manner in which their habitat was destroyed. So during the night, with large construction equipment, 800 trees were cleared with wildlife present in those areas. That is very, very inhumane. Most likely what has happened is that the coyote pack's alpha was lost that night. And that is one of the reasons you would see coyote pack become very aggressive, is when their alpha is lost and they've experienced such an aggressive attack. Now, the province keeps creating these situations of habitat loss, and then we as the residents who are losing our beloved dogs and being attacked in front of our doors, building doors, are told we have to coexist. When we coexisted for years, and now the ecosystem has been disrupted. We need a different solution. I am personally not advocating for culling. I'm advocating for a humane solution, but that is not coexisting. We cannot coexist after everything that this pack of coyotes has been through. Now, I do want to highlight that we now have 5 dogs dead, and we have over 120 attacks. These attacks include lunging, chasing, and biting. I also want to address the fact that residents were not proactively addressing this. That is not true. Since we received education from the city in November, residents have ordered spiked vests, horns, lights. When we're walking, we've actually have pack walks where we walk in groups. We are doing all the safety that we can do, but all of this education, what it does not include is what to do during a surprise attack, because nobody is seeing a coyote and saying, here's my dog. Even I personally was surprise attacked by 2 coyotes steps from my building, which later caused my dog to pass. So we can make ourselves big, but in a surprise attack, there's literally nothing that can be done other than getting in front of your dog or picking up your dog, or maybe kicking the coyote when you are being attacked by 2 or 3. And we do have several attacks that is a pack attack. I further want to say that as of March 23rd, when the aversion team was hired, we still have 38 attacks since then. And the mange coyote is only responsible for a small subset of the attacks that we're seeing. So I do want to absolutely highlight that the attacks continue since the action plan has been active. So clearly, the action plan is not working. On May 2nd, we had Tracy, a resident who is a wheelchair user, charged at by a coyote in Coronation Park again. And despite other residents being present to help her evade the attack, the coyote still continued to be aggressive. Yesterday, we had a 90-pound dog chased in Christie Pitts Park. So again, I do not want the coyotes to be killed, but we do need a better action plan than what we have right now. And even some of the assessments that are being produced are disconnected from what the residents are experiencing. Even the progress reports from animal services are absolutely disconnected from what's actually happening. We as the resident group have contacted a number of sanctuaries, and we've actually found a sanctuary that is willing to take the entire pack.
5 seconds.
Given this, so my call to action is that the city and animal services work with us to facilitate this relocation to the sanctuary, and this situation be formally documented so we stop destroying wildlife habitat and creating this situation by disrupting the ecosystem.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant, Deputy Mayor Malik?
Thank you very much, and thank you, Ruby, to the Community Safety Coalition and all the residents who have been so actively involved in addressing this issue and you know, staying engaged with city staff and with my office. I just have 2 questions. I guess the first one is about the data that you have been collecting and the experiences that you have been sharing. And just speaking to how that is being shared with city staff and how you're understanding that that's being incorporated into the considerations.
Previously, we were meeting weekly with city staff and animal services where we were exchanging data, seeing if any cases have been missed on either side. Since March 23rd, or roughly toward the end of March, our meetings have been canceled and we've had a complete breakdown in communication.
Thank you very much. And just to be clear, this Downtown Coyote Action Plan is, in February, it was moved in terms of its development alongside the immediate actions that the city has been taken. So what we have with the Downtown Action Plan is what you shared in your final comment, which is that we need to have the protocols, the escalation, the tools in place so that, you know, we are never experiencing, you know, the approach that we've seen in this unprecedented situation again. And the steps that have been taken and that are currently live on the ground are what we're taking in the immediate term. So I just want to make clear that the Downtown Action Plan is what we're developing and finalizing so that it is in place, part of the city's overall strategy. And that is what, you know, the operational plan is in front of us today. I will be moving measures forward to strengthen it, and that there's immediate work that's happening on the ground. Hopefully, you know, the issue is resolved as we get this final. I just want to make sure that it's clear that the Downtown Action Plan and its development was not what was guiding the immediate actions. The immediate actions are the immediate actions. Does that? I just want to make sure that that's clear, that we're doing 2 things alongside the immediate term measures and the look ahead measures as well.
I do want to ask if the city and animal services can work with us to facilitate the relocation to the sanctuary that's willing to accept them. We do think that needs to be considered as part of the action plan.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'm happy to put that question to staff when I have the opportunity. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Any other questions of the deputant? Counselor
just-
Fletcher, questions of the deputant?
I can see you've done a lot of, oh, is the deputant there or gone?
Yes, I'm here.
I just see a clock, not you. So now I see you. You've done a lot of research, I can tell, have you not?
Yes.
Yes. So have you looked at other cities in North America in particular or anywhere else where this same scenario may have developed in the over-urbanization of an area and the driving out of the wildlife as happened at Ontario Place?
Yes, we have. So, using Vancouver as an example, the same sort of situation erupted there. They used the same strategy of letting it evolve and seeing if coyotes leave or what happened. It ended up resulting in 45 individuals being bitten and the coyotes being culled. So this is why we don't think waiting for it to evolve and is a good idea, because more people will get hurt and more dogs will get hurt, and the coyotes will eventually have to be culled. Nobody wins in that type of situation.
And the sanctuary idea, that is somewhere in the GTA, or is it in Alberta?
So interestingly, none of the Ontario sanctuaries are willing to take the coyotes, and I just it's a Texas sanctuary that's willing to help us, and we are concerned that no Canadian sanctuaries are willing to help us, but an American one is. Either way, we will take the help that we can get.
Okay, thank you for all of your work.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff? I mean, we have one more deputant. No more questions of the last deputant. Nicole Corrado, still online? Nicole, are you able to connect to sound now?
She just needs to unmute.
Thank you for unmuting me. What I was about to say is that I agree with both what Liz White and Ruby Cooner were saying. I'm so glad that Liz White mentioned mange tail, the coyote who has mange and is very grumpy and cranky because they're not feeling well. And yes, I agree 100% with Liz White that mange tail needs treatment and care, tender lover care, not some exterminator trying to kill them. But mange tail has mange because of the rodenticide bait. The rodenticide bait, it says in your report that you're not allowed to use any adhesives or poisons to kill coyotes, but adhesives and poisons are used to control rats. And what happens is when the rats eat bait, it weakens the rats, which makes them easier for the coyotes to catch. The coyotes catch the rats, they get sublethally poisoned, their immune system goes down, and they get mange. When they get mange, people feel sorry for them, and because their fur falls out, and then people start feeding them. And the coyotes aren't feeling well, they're feeling itchy, so they get in a bad mood, and it's just a whole big problem. Toronto in 2014 tried to regulate pest control companies, but it was the fur industry put an end to that. And still to this day, pest control is the one business that is not licensed in the city of Toronto. Every other business imaginable is licensed except pest control. So there is a whole lot of rodenticide bait boxes all over that area, Liberty Village, causing really a big contributor to the problem. What Toronto needs to do is ban lethal methods for pest control and regulate the pest control companies to only allow humane, non-lethal methods. Lethal methods do not work. They just make the problems worse, as Liz pointed out. And what the city needs to ban lethal methods, regulate the pest control companies, and only allow humane, non-lethal methods. I also really like the idea that Liz White had put in her letter suggesting that teaching residents how to haze. And Ruby Cooner, the sanctuary she mentioned, is Wildlife Rescue and Rehabilitation in Texas. They have taken in the eastern coyotes. Most recently, there were some eastern coyotes from Ohio rescued from a fur farm were taken in. So they can accommodate eastern coyotes. There's also a sanctuary in Quebec called Centre Refuge Nimou, which could also possibly take them. I was actually the one who found the sanctuaries and suggested them to Ruby Cooner. And I think that, you know, the city needs to change its coyote policy to take lethal removal out of the picture, out of the question altogether. That should be taken out of the toolbox. And I think that relocation as a last resort be put back in. Now, I say it needs to be a last resort and only in certain circumstances for relocation, because like with lethal removal, any kind of removal, there will still be more coyotes moving in, and you will not have gotten rid of the original source of the problem. The original source of the problem is the habitat loss, which Toronto needs to really strengthen its tree protection. I would suggest places like Ontario Place be rewilded and given to Parks Canada so that there's a, you know, an impact assessment agency of Canada oversee a lot of the areas of Toronto. There needs to be more national urban parks. And also, I would suggest that Toronto put a complete ban on lethal management of wildlife, and that includes rats and mice, and only allow humane, non-lethal methods. I believe I had reached out to a non-lethal humane specialist in the UK who specializes in rodents and foxes, and I don't
5 seconds.
know to say anything, but yes, that's what was going to say.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant?
No, I just want to say that Ontario Place belongs to the province. They have a plan for it. So Ms. Corrado, just so she's aware of that. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Questions of staff? Deputy Mayor Malik.
Thank you very much. I have a number of questions, but I guess I'll just start with the one that was put to us by the speakers. I also received the mentioned sanctuaries. I know that city staff and animal services did as well. I did follow up because I know there was outreach to those sanctuaries. Can you please speak to your outreach to the sanctuaries that were mentioned and what the outcome of that was?
Thank you, Councillor. To the chair, we did speak to both of those sanctuaries. The one in Quebec said, first of all, that we wouldn't be able to move them across the border. As well, they did not have space. And the one from Texas said a similar thing, that to get them from Toronto to Texas was impossible, and they didn't recommend it. And as well, the province did not support that relocation.
And I mean, did they speak to their availability or space or anything like that? Like, are there circumstances where they would accept the coyotes? It sounds like the ones from Toronto and don't fall into those bounds.
Yeah, the sanctuary from Texas does accept coyotes, but usually in situations where they've lost a limb, lost an eye, they wouldn't be able to survive in the wild. And in this case, the one coyote has been identified as missing hair, so it could be mange, and that is treatable and wouldn't be something that they would support living in a sanctuary situation.
Okay, thank you. As rightfully so, there has been a lot of mention of the Ontario Place redevelopment, that it moved forward without an environmental assessment to consider the impacts. Can you speak a little bit to how an environmental assessment would have allowed the city to better prepare for the potential impacts of that massive redevelopment and the impact on the destruction, on the community from the destruction of more than 800 trees that was home to many wildlife, including coyotes? We know from staff and residents who were eyewitnesses that they literally saw animals scurrying from the destruction of those trees. What does an environmental assessment and proper process allow us to do in terms of preparing for impacts?
Thank you, Councillor. To the chair. Yes, we have looked into that and looked at that. The province maintains that there were no issues with what they did and that they did do some kind of an assessment. When you're doing these assessments, it's really important to look at wildlife corridors and how they traverse that landscape. And those are really important things to maintain the distance between wildlife and people and allow for that movement for both people and coyotes, all other wildlife, to maintain that separation and those healthy boundaries.
Can you also speak to the city's request for the province to share the costs of our coyote response? And I know there's also been exploration on increasing fines for direct feeding, which feels very appropriate in this situation, but we also do need to engage the province on.
Thank you. So through the chair, the request was made to the province in March to share the costs related to the city's management of coyotes. To date, we have not heard back on that request. In terms of looking at increased fines, this is certainly something that we could do. Fines for feeding wildlife were introduced in 2023. Those are currently set at $300. It's a broad category for feeding all wildlife. We could take a further look at specific fines related to coyotes. This is something that MLS can make a recommendation to the province on, and they would ultimately approve that for our implementation.
So a big piece of what we've been hearing is not just about reactive measures, but to be proactive in terms of what we do and how we work with communities in terms of deterrence, in terms of being able to provide a more appropriate, responsive, and timely action when it comes to the type of spike that we have seen. Can you speak to some of the approaches to look at more proactive deterrent measures to control the interactions between humans and wildlife, especially in dense communities like the ones we have downtown?
Thank you. Yes, Chair, we've been undertaking significant and proactive measures given the situation in Liberty Village, Fort York. We've learned a lot through this process. Measures like hiring a specialized aversion team and having them on the ground. They've conducted 25 separate assessments, working with a hunter-trapper and getting expert advice on the particular situation has been certainly helpful. We also use our officers to conduct patrols. At the height of that, it was daily patrols in the neighborhood to provide education, work with residents to help them understand what they can also do. And building on that, certainly public education and working with community members has been very important and will remain important to have participation in conducting those aversion techniques, which have proven to be somewhat successful with the coyotes living in the area.
We might have to go to a second round, Councillor, because I'm giving you extra time before. I think you have, Councillor Fletcher, did you have questions?
I'm just noticing that there's a tremendous amount of the province today, besides the clearing of Ontario Place without an environmental assessment, that I've heard they are unwilling to split any costs or cover any costs for the city, correct?
The province has not yet responded to that request.
Well, it's the same as if you've not responded, not planning on doing it. So there's still some room to push them on that. And do we have any idea, or could we have an idea of what the costs are because of their clearing of Ontario Place in the way that they did?
So Chair, I don't have a specific estimate of those costs. I can say we have invested a large number of resources into the community, given the situation, both from staff time as well as expert panel and other sources. So it's certainly been a significant investment from the city. I should also mention that in making this investment, it also has an impact on our service levels elsewhere. So it's really a careful balance.
Understood. So I think it's helpful to understand what we're asking for, including there's increased service, what that means, because it's a very particular circumstance we're dealing with. And then apparently they're also saying where you can transport coyotes or not transport coyotes, correct? So that's the other piece that the province has.
Yes, Chair, the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Act determines a relocation limit of 1 kilometer.
And this is provincial legislation, so they would have to make a change. And for fines, to increase our fines, feeding a cats in the neighborhood, feeding a skunk in the neighborhood, feeding a raccoon in the neighborhood is obviously not the same as feeding a coyote in the neighborhood because of the large number of bites to humans and attacks and dead dogs. Would I be right to say that? So the fine really should be more than $300.
Thank you for that. Yes, we think it's worth a second look. Certainly, we know that food sources and feeding wildlife in the area has been a significant and ongoing contributing factor to the coyotes' behavior in the area.
And then probably there's some restaurants and how they're disposing and how they're maintaining their foodstuffs is also an issue, which is something the BIA office or business folks could look at. Solid Waste could actually look at that and recommend further steps so that there's not these open feeding sources.
Yes, in fact, we conduct weekly patrols specific to waste management to look at compliance with the bylaws around containing waste. And we've been actively working with multiple businesses in the area to bring them into compliance in that area.
So only you, or is Solid Waste not doing some of that work with you or for you?
They are a partner in that work, yes.
Pardon me?
They are a partner in that work.
So how many infractions have you found from the solid waste blitzes?
I'm aware of 3 in particular, but I would have to get back to you on the specifics of the updated information there.
So this is I think this will may go to council, in which case we can get a little more information on that part of it because of the waste management. So there really is a very big piece the province has here. And as far as compliance with, anyway, lots of other things going on. So there's lots going on across the city. I did my citywide, but it does appear to be growing because last year in 2025, it's called Coyote Dangerous to Public at 311, and my staff have found out that that means that you're being stalked. There's something happening between you and the coyote. It's not just that you happen to see one in the neighborhood, correct?
Yes, Chair, that category is a coyote encounter that is not an attack or a bite.
But an encounter that wasn't just, hi, coyote, and you walk away. There's something else going on with the coyote. I just want to be clear.
Yes.
So that's quite a large number. In 2025, there were 234 of those in only 4 months. And last year, there was 438 of those. And that's
Last question, we can go to a second round.
We have to just go to a second round because using 311, there's a lot of excellent data. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Anyone online? I have a couple of questions regarding, well, thank you for covering the question of the province and the provincial responsibility. I did want to ask about the 2 things, waste disposal and feeding of wildlife. This is a problem beyond this community, correct? I think about the rat mitigation work that I've been very interested as it affects many parts of the city, and it's really creating some quality of life problems and mental health problems, and it's very expensive to get rid of rats. You can't really select when you're feeding wildlife who's going to eat it, correct?
Chair, that's correct. Certainly a contributing factor, both for wildlife eating food left out or improperly managed food sources. Rats themselves are also a food source for coyotes in this case.
Right, so when we put out, I know I've met people that they think they're feeding raccoons, or people are feeding skunks, people are feeding cats. Bird feeders are actually feeding rats, and then coyotes feed on rats, but also you could be feeding a coyote. So there's a real behavioral challenge in the city of Toronto beyond this community. Thanks for clarifying that. In terms of can you tell us again about the bigger picture strategy? Because I think we've delved into elements of it, but what is the big picture strategy with respect to the behavior? I'll ask that second. My next question was about the particular behavior in this community. Is it related to, as one deputant suggested, to what would be a kind of a violent displacement when you, in addition to all the construction, et cetera, we're talking about what was a small ecosystem at Ontario Place. What does that do to behavior when there's that kind of destruction and displacement? Do we know?
To the chair, it's hard to say what exactly it can do, but it certainly, when coyotes or wildlife is displaced, it can sort of leave them frantic and anxious, looking for space, and into a space that maybe they weren't used to, and then trying to deal with other things that are coming to them that they didn't have to deal with before. Not having resting places is really important, and that could make a change in how they manage through the landscape.
Right, because we heard a lot about heightened behavior. So back to the question that I asked about the bigger picture.
Yes, through you. This is the Coyote response strategy is the city's operational framework for how we respond to incidents and situations related to coyotes. It has been in place since 2013. It is due for an update, and that's something we're actively working on and planning to bring back to Committee Council this year. That strategy lays out public education and other measures, including what we call an incident response framework, which sets out particular protocols around making decisions on how we respond to incidents. So it's an important piece of work, and we do look forward to bringing that back for review.
And when will that be reporting back? When has you been directed to bring that back?
Through you, there's direction to bring that back for Q4 this year. Because of the importance of this issue, we are looking at how we can advance that work sooner.
Okay. And then I know that it's been established that community members feel that they're doing the maximum that they can who are dog owners. I did want to ask the question about the extendable leashes, because we've had a lot of problems with dog bites, dog incidents, people knocked over, just the lunging, et cetera. It's identified by one of the deputants as one of the conditions that makes it unsafe, maybe puts stress on the animal. Can we talk about whether that is for the growing dog population in the city and all of the human-dog interactions in addition to dog-coyote interactions? Is this a good practice? Is this something that we need to educate the public about? Because that's certainly a problem that we hear a lot of in our office.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that is certainly something that we proactively need to educate the public on a lot more, and we are going to be doing that through a campaign that is coming shortly and being worked on now to ensure that people understand that everybody wants to keep their dogs safe, and we know that, and it's just making people aware of things that could possibly happen should they have their dog further away from them than, is recommended. And just to be aware of things that could happen if their dogs are farther than a 2-meter leash, so 6 feet.
Is it also, though, that when they extend, they can go into areas and, if there's an animal that's sort of hiding, all of a sudden you're in there, the dog is actually lunging?
Yeah, and so that has happened, and we need to make people aware of where they're going, the area, the landscape, bushes and things like that, where other animals may be, and they may startle them, and then things negatively could happen. And so keeping your dog close is a very important message for dog owners.
Not just with respect to coyotes, but all wildlife.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so it sounds like we need a second round. We are not, given the size of our agenda, I'm going to proceed with that. First up, Deputy Mayor Malik, questions of staff.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to understand the reasoning behind some of the escalation thresholds that have been set. Councillor Fletcher mentioned some of the very extensive 311 data and what it's describing, and those interactions and bites to humans have been reported. In the escalation threshold in attachment 1, you set a standard that, quote, if a coyote has confirmed to have bitten or scratched a human and there are no dogs, pups, or dens nearby, staff will initiate assessment to determine if removal was appropriate. From the very start, what we've heard is that, that sort of interaction is a trigger for escalation. And in a city with the number of dogs that we have, especially in our dense downtown communities where people don't have backyards, and where our own dog off-leash area report told us that, in a dense, tall building community, on each floor, you are looking at least 3 to 8 dogs. And in a neighborhood of tens of thousands of people in Fort York and Liberty Village, that threshold is just, does not seem like a reasonable one. Can you speak to that and setting a threshold and what that means in communities like the ones we've described?
Certainly. So Chair, I think that's a helpful thing to take a closer look at. The language in the action plan does speak to no dogs, dens, or pups. I think probably a better way to talk about that, and based on the expert advice that we received from the panel, is really about no other explanatory factors for the coyote behavior. So the content in the action plan will inform our incident framework, but I think we have an opportunity to better clarify the specifics of that particular aspect of the protocol.
So, in line with that in terms of escalation thresholds and also what's reasonable, realistic, and actually bears out in the experience that we've had over the last several long months, has been a serious concern about the approach to education and engagement with residents, with community members, with pet owners to keep safe and curb encounters with coyotes. And, we have talked about it, but, having a much more pet-friendly, community pet owner-centered approach that can more effectively support pet owners to keep their pets safe and, as was described, to actually, have more helpful education in terms of what to do in the specific situations that they are finding themselves in. Can you please speak to how this Downtown Coyote Action Plan can address that very serious concern that has been at the core of much of what we're hearing from residents in terms of how the city can be doing better?
Certainly. So through you, Chair, public education is an absolutely critical part of responding to coyotes generally, but in particular downtown. We have learned a lot and put a lot of measures in place around public education, but more needs to be done. It's why the report speaks to a campaign that will be coming to the community to better support education around what they can do. And we certainly hear the feedback that this needs to be centered around being pet friendly and responsive to working with the community and how they can keep their pets safe through the actions that need to be taken. We will be working hard on amplifying messages and providing materials through a variety of channels to amplify public education messages.
Thank you. So when it comes to feral cats, there's a very well-established trap, neuter, and release program. It's a program that has existed for a long while. And while we know that coyotes and cats are vastly different animals, can you please speak to the benefits of learning from other jurisdictions on coyote reproduction or population control approaches, especially given the extreme loss of habitat that we've spoken about in Ward 10 in particular in our downtown communities?
Thank you, Councillor. To the chair, yes, this is certainly something that we can explore with feral cats. Because they're domestic animals, it's much easier to do that kind of work. Working with wildlife, especially a keystone species like coyotes, just needs a lot more exploring and information gathering before something like that could be done, but it's certainly something that we can explore.
And so I just have one final question. You know, we've spoken about it and you've heard it from communities. For me, success in terms of the city's plan and approach is that residents and pets are able to enjoy their neighborhoods without fear of a run-in with coyotes. And I just want to hear a little bit more about what success looks like for you out of a downtown coyote action plan and from the measures that we're looking forward to taking.
Thank you for the question. I think we share the goal of a successful resolution and path forward in this community. As I've mentioned, a lot of investment, time, and resources have been put into managing the escalated series of factors that are present in that community, and we are committed to continuing to work in that community, conducting assessments, taking expert advice, and supporting the community to have a successful path forward.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher, you had follow-up questions? 5 minutes.
Just a few more. Just in particular, I'm going through the bites and human bites, and it seems like Ward 2, which has that very large Centennial Park, large green space, Ward 4, which has Parkdale, which has High Park, and then up in Ward 22, there were 2 bites. So I think you'd agree that in some of these areas where there's the bites in those wards, there are large green spaces that perhaps coyotes are habitating in at the moment, compared to this tiny little wee concrete area down in Liberty Village. There does seem to be a difference in geography and built form.
Yeah, Chair, I would agree. The circumstances downtown are much more compressed and condensed than they are in other areas, though we do continue to see sightings and other encounters with coyotes throughout the city, particularly in those wards that you mentioned.
Yes, and whether it's in Liberty Village or whether it's in Ward 2, a human bite is a pretty big deal. It is a human bite from a dog. Now you're in trouble, right? Now the dog's in trouble. Now the owner's in trouble.
Yes, correct.
It's considered extremely serious. So the fact that there were, and you have in the categories, animal attack, animal bite, human attack, human bite. And in 2025, there were 51 aggregated for the 4 months. It does seem to be escalating, because in 2024, there were only 8 of those per month, and in 2025, there's 13 per month, and we've just started the year. Does that concern you?
Chair, I think no matter how you cut the data, we are seeing a higher percentage and concentration in Ward 10 than we had previously, and also compared to other wards.
Just in general, that is a higher number. And do you think people are just, they don't always call 311, do they? No.
Not always. We receive reports through a variety of channels, but they may also choose or not know to report. So that's certainly part of our public education.
Can I ask if vets, do they regularly report if a dog has been attacked by a coyote?
To the chair, no, veterinarians aren't required to report.
No, I know they're not required, but just out of courtesy, do they let you know or not?
No, they don't.
Okay. Could they not? Because I just am looking here where a dog was killed in one ward. I happen to know about it, very serious attack. But it's not even in 311. So there's a lot of data that hasn't been captured in 311. This is captured data.
Yes, correct. We could ask for them to report to us.
Right. So this isn't, it's not going away, and I know you've done a lot. I've seen all the signs, and you've been very creative, as you always are, with your signage. Congratulations to all of your staff at MLS. They're great. So this is just, I guess, going to be an ongoing problem for a little while longer. There's no magic here that you know of. And there's a lot of provincial requirements as well to make any big changes.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Any other questions of staff? Nope. To speak, Deputy Mayor Malik.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I do have a motion. It was circulated this morning. And I want to begin by just expressing my incredible heartbreak at the harm and tragedy that has been an outcome of these interactions with coyotes. I want to deeply thank my communities in Liberty Village and Fort York and the surrounding areas. Thank you to Ruby, the Community Safety Coalition, to Emily, to all the advocates, activists, residents who have been engaged in this issue. I've been reaching out to our office, and my commitment has been to ensure that we are in regular communication, that how seriously my office and the City of Toronto staff are taking this, and that we are working to move forward in an escalated response and next steps that moves to resolving this issue. And the motion that we have in front of us is to add measures that strengthen the city's capability to respond to coyotes in our downtown communities effectively, so that pets and residents can be in their neighborhoods safely. And these recommendations cover quite a bit of really important ground where we have seen gaps, and that look to go further in terms of our capability to respond as a city. Capturing more accurate 311 data is critical. To work in consultation with all relevant divisions to address issues like feeding and waste management. To work with the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, the ministry, and other municipalities to look at the feasibility of a reproductive control, population control approach, especially when it comes to loss of habitat in our downtown and in Ward 10, to make sure that we have reliable, clear channels to be communicating with residents and neighbors about our city's response and what they can expect from us to support them in keeping the neighborhood safe from the coyote attacks. And a number of measures to look at how we are proactive, preventative, looking at deterrence, targeting our resources as a city in the right way, to ensure that the thresholds and estimated ranges of time for escalation protocols are visible to us, and that we are addressing this issue with every tool that we have from the City of Toronto without delay. And to put a more pet-friendly, pet-centered, and resident approach to making sure that our education efforts and our approaches to pet safety are effective and responsive to the needs of the communities. To make sure that the fines for feeding, we're exploring how we can put them at a threshold that really is truly a way that we eliminate that as a factor. And of course, identifying how the province can be responsive to our request to support us in resourcing the efforts that we've made to respond to coyotes, and to be able to report back on this when it comes together in the next quarter alongside the city's coyote response strategy. To have this many coyote interactions in downtown neighborhoods is unprecedented in Toronto, and I cannot stress that enough. And the data bears this out. Since the provincial government plowed ahead with their redevelopment plans for Ontario Place last October, which included the mass clear cutting that was mentioned, the number of monthly coyote-related service requests received in First Spadina, Fort York, Ward 10, have multiplied by 10. And this is a serious public safety issue, and I know that is understood and shared by all of us. Pets have been attacked, and pet owners are fearful. I hear about the close calls constantly and share the alarm and urgency to act. And residents deserve to be able to enjoy their neighborhood without fearing a run-in with a coyote. That feels very basic in the city of Toronto. And I have brought the concerns from our community and what we've been experiencing to City Hall. And since February, I've been very appreciative of staff mobilizing quickly to be present on the ground, to respond to distress calls, to create an escalation protocol in the immediate term while we look at this targeted approach that equips us well for the long haul. And those important actions are critical, and I want to recognize their work and the community's work in bringing that to bear. Particularly thanks to Carlton, to Ginny, to Will, to Esther, to Jill for their incredible work. And we agree that more needs to be done. We are not there yet. And I will continue to push forward for resolution, and my motion today includes measures to strengthen that so that staff, and this is so important, will be able to respond without delay to coyote-related situations that are particular to our downtown neighborhoods. We know this will not be the last time that we have to contend with challenges like this as an outcome of, mishandled redevelopment and loss of habitat. That's why we have to make sure that we are never in this situation again, that we have everything that we need to act quickly. This framework is badly needed. We have to be able to respond and keep our communities safe. Again, I want to thank staff for municipal licensing and standards and all the related divisions for the work. I look forward to seeing a continuation of our immediate next steps in our community. I know that there are active assessments right now for us to be able to get to resolution and get further in terms of curbing the amount of interactions that we're seeing, and to work to strengthen our response as we continue to move forward in our downtown communities and as a city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Fletcher?
I just want to thank the staff for their work on this really difficult file, because in looking at the spread of the coyotes and the increase in the frequency of interactions, particularly with people, it is an increasingly difficult file. There's no playbook for this. And there are a whole number of things that I would support in the Deputy Mayor's motion. I think that the vigilance factor is very, very critical, and there's just no easy piece, particularly when I hear that, number one, the province has to agree to the increase in fines. Number two, they haven't gotten even back to us to talk about costs. I think that's very serious. And number three, that they have to give permission to transport the coyotes over the border. They're not allowed to go to Quebec or go anywhere else, actually. So it is just, and when you take the fact that those lands, the Ontario Place lands, had been the home of much wildlife, and when we heard about, I think it was Ruby talked about when the trees came down, 800 trees is more than 800 trees. It's a habitat for many, many wild animals, and right in the center of the city. So they're moving up to a place that is not green, has a small amount of parkland, is Liberty Village, where just is very, very dense. It's an extremely dense area. We know the issues even with traffic, because in our planning regimen, we approve this because the traffic looks good, and then we say, oh, it's okay for the next one, and it's okay for the next one. But when you put it all together, all those ingredients, you now have a terrible congestion mess that people did forecast, but we were told it would all be fine. So those are the conditions in this area, and it doesn't surprise me that while there are, and I could read you all of the bites, all of the attacks from each ward, but I won't do that now because I have it all here thanks to 311. Yes, here you go. It really is in particular in this particular zone and created by those very conditions that we've been discussing. So we can never talk about this without this having been created by conditions of no environmental assessment. Just to go ahead, clear cut a whole area, not understand anything to do with the environment, the flora, the fauna of any way in an environmental assessment, which would have said, well, there's host this, there's many different animals, and what's going to happen. The public could have been there to discuss it. So this is just all at the foot of Queen's Park. Now, I would like to transport those coyotes up to Queen's Park Circle, and they could live there happily, because that is the reason why you have that pack of coyotes in Liberty Village. And it's a very trying thing, very difficult for the community, very difficult for the counselor, very difficult for staff, very difficult for everybody. And it was helpful to have Ms. White come and Ruby come today to start that conversation about what can be done. I don't think in the city of Toronto, I know that nobody's going to start killing animals. That isn't who we are. We went through the cormorants a number of years ago. Again, the province said, let's have cormorant culls. And they had cormorant culls up and down all of Lake Ontario. Presqu'île had a cormorant cull, and they said, just go ahead and cull your cormorants. This is not a city. We're a very wildlife-friendly city. So when we get a circumstance like this, it does mean it's testing our limits. And eventually we had a very long conversation, and with animal lovers, with boat lovers, with everybody who was on the spit, and came to a plan to basically curtail the growth of the cormorants over a number of years. And it has been working. There aren't as many, and they had really destroyed a lot of habitat. So I just think we have to find the Toronto way to do this, and bringing people together always is the Toronto way to come up with the best plan. So I'd encourage that and leave that in your good hands, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Any other speakers? I will speak briefly to say that, you know, this, as Councillor Fletcher was indicating, no environmental assessment, the destruction without any plan of a small ecosystem, the destruction of 800 trees with wildlife inside. And then this is another example of provincial decision-making that then has to be managed at the municipal level. And it's a constant problem, whether it's housing policy and the fact that we have to respond with shelters and invest in supportive housing. Those should be provincial responsibilities. But in this case, it's even more egregious because this was done for the benefit of a private corporation, which has misrepresented itself, and is now the community members, the local council, the people all over the downtown are experiencing the pressure and the crisis. But I would say it goes beyond that, because this staff in animal services and municipal licensing and standards also has to respond to a lot of other crises that are happening in the city around construction, for example, or intensification, a lot more dogs in the city. I think about the work that I've been very interested in is around rat mitigation, just because it's horrifying when you have rats invading your home, the construction displaces them. Again, we don't have the tools or the resources. We don't have the powers and authority to solve all these problems, and yet at this level, we have no choice but trying to do the work. And that is the incredible work that staff have done here. Listening to community, stretching constantly, being pulled in different directions. So I know that, and I want to thank you for that. I think that it's interesting that a former city councillor has now been hired to work for Durham Spa, on whose behalf all of this has taken place. And so I'd say that there has to be some accountability engagement, not just with the provincial government, but if Durham Spa wants to be a good neighbor, maybe they need to get on side as well. Because the cost, the human cost, the cost to wildlife, the cost to the city, its resources, to this division, which has so many other things to do, cannot be borne at this level alone. It's got to be, we have to elevate it up, and this is a really important example of how we have to put the pressure where it belongs, where the decisions were made, and where the benefits are being reaped, because they're definitely not being reaped in the City of Toronto. So with that, if I don't see any other speakers, I'd like to move to the motion by Deputy Mayor Malik. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item as amended. Oh, no, no item as amended. So with that, that concludes our meeting, and I want to thank all of the staff, all the members of the public that came to share their thoughts, and to my council colleagues to wish you a good day.
Thank you, Councilor Barrow.
Thank you.